Good morning. If I could have your attention, please, I'd like to call this legislative breakfast to order. My name is Bill Davies, the moderator for this year's series of legislative breakfasts, which this year are hosted by Vermont's North Country Chamber of Commerce. And in behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to welcome everyone this morning. I'm also very pleased to recognize this morning Dan Pellerin, who is the Vice Chair of the Chamber, and Karen Garrity, who at least was here moments ago, but she's on her way out, but we couldn't really get organized without her assistance. She is the NBDA Economic Development Specialist. If there's anyone here this morning who doesn't already receive notice of these breakfasts, with reference, please give Dan your email address before leaving, and your name will be added to the email list. And again, thank you, Dan and Karen, for organizing and coordinating these breakfasts and maintaining the email list. This year, as has been the case for several years now, coffee, juice, and a light breakfast are generally available at a charge of $5 per person, except when the breakfast is sponsored by a sponsor, as is the case today. Today's breakfast is sponsored by Paul DeSell Financial Strategies. And I'd like to recognize Paul if he's present. I haven't seen him. Probably he has to work extra hard this week to raise the money to pay for the breakfast. Again, I think I speak for everyone in the room when we wish to express our appreciation to Paul for sponsoring this breakfast. And again, as always, we appreciate the hospitality extended to us by the management and staff here at the Eastside Restaurant. It's a little different setup this morning. Taking a little while to get organized. This morning, the proceedings are being broadcast, and Terry DeFazio is videotaping the proceedings for later broadcast on Channel 15, the local PEG access station. And I didn't remember to check with Terry beforehand, but if it's like last year, the breakfast will be broadcast tonight at 8 p.m. Yeah, and also on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Right. Good. Okay. In addition, we're pleased to have the print media represented again this morning by Robin Smith from the Record, as well as Ed Barber from the Newport Daily Express. And thank you, Terry, Robin, and Ed. At each of our breakfasts this year, we will have one senator and two representatives as our special guests. The selected senator and representatives are each given the opportunity to make a 10, 15-minute presentation. There's no time limit involved, but once in a while we do need to rope them in if the presentation is going for too long. And again, we recognize that 10, 15 minutes isn't long enough to give a full overview of what our area legislators are doing in Montpelier, but at least we hope that they can hit the highlights. Following the presentations by the legislators, we open the floor to questions and comments directed to the featured legislators. Those asking questions or making comments are asked to stand up front here where I am. And this morning our setup is a little different with the camera there. There are going to be some people who are going to become very experienced at what the backs of some of us look like. But be that as it may, again, we ask that you identify yourself and tell us to whom the question or comment is directed. If you don't tell us to whom it's directed, then we'll assume that it's directed to all three of the featured legislators. We give everyone present a chance to speak once before we recognize that person for a second time. And if we get to the point where we run out of questions or comments, which I doubt will happen, then folks can have a second bite at the apple. And finally, I'd like to remind everyone that the purpose of these breakfasts is to focus on the issues facing, or which we believe should be faced, by the Vermont legislature this year. Recognize that there are a lot of local issues and also certainly a lot of national issues of great interest to all of us. But the focus of these breakfasts needs to be on the issues being dealt with by our legislators. This morning we're very pleased to have as our special guests Senator Bobby Starr and Representatives Lynn Batchelor and Woodman Page. Senator Starr serves as chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and also serves as a member of the Senate Committee on Appropriations. Bobby, please tell us what's happening in Montpelier this year.
Well, thank you, Bill, and for being our moderator, which has gone on for many years, and Dan and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting the meeting. As Bill mentioned, I do chair the Committee on Agriculture in the Senate, and have done that for the past few years. We work on a host of issues in ag. A couple of years ago, the President Pro Tem of the Senate also asked the Ag Committee to, besides working on ag issues, work on forestry issues and work some on rural economic development. And so far this year, we spent quite a lot of time putting the hemp bill together, S58, which is a bill that we passed the hemp law about 15 years ago, but the feds never approved growing hemp, and it's of course been against the law over the years for whatever reason. And we could get into that, but we may as well move on and talk about the positive stuff. And what we did with the hemp bill, to start with, we had to set up a state policy to allow it to be grown according to the federal rule or law that got changed this past year. In order to have a system, you had to have a state-approved system and set up the inspection, testing, fees, and all of those things to make it legal. And what we did is we spent quite a lot of time trying to develop the small market of the hemp. And what I mean by small is protecting the small growers that grow from a few plants to up to a half an acre, which is a pretty good size for any individual or small farmer to grow. And left the fee at $50, so that it's pretty reasonable to get into for the small grower, and it works up to any size, which if you wanted to do, say, 5 acres, it would cost you $1,500 for your registration fee and license. And the reason we did that is because you can make, if you get it set up properly, you can make good money off of even a half an acre of hemp with the oils and the seed and all the products that you can get from hemp. So we're hoping that we won't drive the market like we have a lot of other markets to be a commodity market, because when you get so big that you're producing for the commodity market, it seems like the middleman and the end person makes all the money, and the one doing the work, planting and harvesting, gets the chat. maybe there's another word you could rhyme with that, but they don't do so well. We voted that bill out of our committee 5-0, and it had to go to finance because of these fees that we've got in it. But there seems to be a lot of interest and excitement and positive feelings in regards to the hemp process. Another bill that we've been working on is the Rural Development Bill, and that has a host of issues in it. A couple of things that it has in it is loggers, and that industry pays a real high rate for workers' compensation. It's like 50 and 60 cents on every dollar they pay somebody to work for them. They pay that, say, 50, 60 cents in workers' comp. So, and it makes it almost impossible for a logger to hire extra help to work in the woods, and that's why every now and then you'll read about some guy logging all alone, and a tree falls on them, or something serious happens, and they end up dying. And what we've done is we've set up so far we've got a program set up through the Forest and Parks Division that would go and have classes around the state to teach logging safety, and as well as giving the class, they would also go to the job site and make sure that the loggers are following through on the safety practices that they've been taught to use at these classes. Because over in Maine, they did something similar to this. What they found is if they didn't follow through with going to the log site and checking and making sure that these loggers were doing as they were taught and shown what to do, they kind of skip some of the practices, and then they get hurt again. And so hopefully we can get that down to 20 or 30 cents per dollar or percent, and it'll make it more profitable. Also, truckers at truck loads, they were having serious problems with getting to the log site. Neighbors would complain about the trucks going up and down the road and all the things that go with trucking. So we also put in a forestry nuisance type situation where people could still complain, but it would only be a minor thing, and they wouldn't get their road shut down to the loggers, hoping that that'll ease the burden on them, plus giving them some training so their workers' comp went down, and opened the market up so it includes a bigger group of truckers, so that there's more people paying into the organization, to workers' comp, so that the cost, when they do have a problem, spread over a bigger area rather than just a few that truck logs. The other issue we've got in ag that we're working on is asking the ag and economic development to look into the feasibility of building a milk plant that would take milk in and bottle and distribute in southern New England and maybe down toward New York. And the reason for that is if if any of you have been to the store lately and bought a gallon of milk, you'll find that it's usually $4, $4.50 a gallon, and the farmer's only getting about 12 or 13 of those dollars for 100 pounds, and there's 11 gallons of milk, and there's 11 gallons in 100 pounds. So you can see that's the commodity market that I was talking about earlier. The middle guy and the end guy gets all the money, and the farmer's barely able to squeak by. So we're going to look into the fact of maybe building a plant down toward White River, Brattleboro, down that way, to see what it would cost, if it would make any sense in doing it. It would be a feasibility study, actually, on that. So that, that's, I think, a positive thing to at least look into. We did what we call a Green Mountain Forest Carbon Pilot Program, and it seems that some states where they have a lot of automobiles and industry, they're producing a lot of carbon. And we have very little of that, but we have a lot of woods and trees and forests that these people will buy a carbon offset, what they call, and that isn't always the best practice to use, but if they're going to be running cars in 6 lanes wide both directions, and they're going to keep producing this carbon, I felt that we may as well capitalize on that market and sell them the offsets from our woods and trees, so it will generate some money for our forest industry to work off from. And what we found out so far, it runs about $16 an acre of carbon that they could receive from that. So, if you had 500 acres or even 100 acres, it would be certainly enough to pay the property tax on that woods. And the big idea behind this, or my idea, isn't a big idea, is that we've lost some of our forests. People couldn't pay their taxes, and so they haven't been able to keep it. So they sell off 50 acres or 20 acres or whatever. It's splitting the woods up and our land up so that hunters, snowmobilers, even cross-country skiers are running into problems because they run into the no trespassing signs that these people buy their 25 acres and put the signs up, and then that messes the recreational industry up. So maybe this, if we can get it passed, will help a little bit and allow people to still keep their land, and it might even encourage others to buy the land and keep it all together rather than dividing it up. And then we have one other issue I'll mention is it seems that we have quite a few beef animals here in Vermont now. A lot of farms have gone to growing beef and grass-fed beef, and really good beef. Probably better than what we get in the West, because they pump them full of things that aren't maybe the best for us out there. And so we set up a certification program, or we're setting it up, that would allow farmers that want to participate to get a certificate, and it would track the animal from the farm to the plate. So there's traceability of beef and beef products. So if somebody goes in the store, they can see it was raised on farm ABC Farm in Newport, Vermont, and so they know that it came from here and it's been properly raised and taken care of. So we're trying to put that together. It's coming along pretty good, actually, and hopefully we'll get that on the committee. A couple of other issues in the Senate we're still wrestling with is Act 46, which our schools up here have kind of backed away from, trying to keep small schools in our local communities. And so we still got that issue that it's coming over actually from the House. And so we'll have that issue in front of us when we get back there, probably not until after town meeting. There's always, we're working on also advanced wood boilers to help people buy pellet furnaces or furnaces that run off wood chips that should help get rid of low-grade wood from our forest as we move forward. A few of the things we did pass out H97, which came to us from the House, which is the budget adjustment bill, and that passed through the Senate on a unanimous vote. A few of the things, we put $800,000 into child care appropriations so people could still have their children looked after at daycare places and things of that nature. We added $1.8 million to strengthen the state's data infrastructure so that it won't get hacked and stolen. Added a couple $100,000 we set up a bill, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, to expunge people's court records. It seems that not a lot, but quite a few young people will get into a mess when they're 18, 19 and get a felony charge, and then they can't get jobs. And so we set up a system that if they stayed good for like 8 or 10 years, they could get that record expunged from the court records, and then it would do away with that felony charge. And the people that were doing that, the court system, was finding a lot of people applying to do this, more than we thought. And so they needed extra money to get this processed and move forward. The juvenile center that we have in Essex Junction to take care of people under 18 years old, that got decertified by the feds. It's an older building. So we put $2.7 million into upgrading it so it's passable, but also some for a study to see if we want to keep that old place going or build a whole new place. And there's a host of other things we did, but I think I'd better drop it there, and if you have questions, be glad to answer. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. And now from the House side of the Vermont legislature, I'd like to welcome Lynn Batchelor. Lynn this year serves as a member of the House Committee on Education. Lynn?
Good morning. morning, everybody. Happy, wonderful day, whatever it is. Snow, sleet, rain, can be absolutely anything. This is an eye-opener for me. I have always represented either human services or corrections and institutions. So I don't know who I made mad or annoyed, but I got removed from institutions and I'm now on education. And a learning curve, I don't think I've ever seen a big learning curve as this one. We have passed out a few bills. Of course, 46 was a thorn in everybody's side. And then we were lucky enough where we really were not forced to merge yet. Who knows? But we passed a bill called H39. And H39, what it does is try to put a waiting period until after the courts had made their decision as to what is going to happen to all of the districts that have sued them by saying they do not want to merge and that merging would be very detrimental to the children. And of course, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is taking care of the children. However, I heard one thing from the Secretary of Education, Dan French, that I think the main goal, you'll love this, is to have one supervisory union for the whole state. Now, I didn't ask him, but I bet dollars to donuts it'll be in Burlington. Somewhere. It won't be any place close to where we are. I am really, really so sorry to see Holland School close, even though they only have 36 students at this point. But I don't know how we are supposed to grow and bring in more children when we have an economy that is pushing people totally out of the state, the retirees, the taxes on their estates, and there's, as you all have kept note of, I'm sure, 50 million things that we have to do. And let's see, you have all kinds of permits to start a new business. I mean, it used to be able, if you had an idea, you went, and if you figured it was good enough, you'd get a patent, and away you'd go. Well, that doesn't work that way anymore. So we also passed out Friday a bill called H-140, and what that does is it's an advisory council on special education. And we have been finding out that this council is more administrative than it is really doing what it should be doing. And that's having people with disabilities and children with disabilities, the parents of children, the majority on this particular case in this wonderful advisory council. So they can be heard. What good is it if we don't know what it is that they need? And the Senate passed this over S-40. S-40 is testing and remediation on lead in the school waters and child care. I think that's pretty important. I don't know why it hasn't done before this. We are being asked, in 2007, the Education Committee put a moratorium on school construction money to have people ask for this money, and I believe it was a 30% match. But we had to stop it. We were way over our head in debt, and we were not being paid back at a rate where we had the money to go ahead and give more schools some money. I got a postcard from, you'll love this one too. I got a postcard from a school district that said in 1960 they inherited a mobile home for their schools, for the children. It had no insulation in the ceiling or the walls. And they need money to do this. And I hate to say that I wasn't very I didn't feel very sorry for them because I said, what the heck have you been doing since 1940 or since 1960? You couldn't have blown insulation in it. We have buildings that their ceilings are falling down. The gymnasium in one of the supervisory unions south of us, they're also having all kinds of problems. But we can't take care of everybody. When I served on institutions, the capital bill was in that, and that pays for buildings, repairs, renovations. But we've been asked last year to try to fund most of the Clean Water Bill, and the Clean Water Act. Well, there's only so much money to go around. So I don't think school construction is going to open up very soon or with a whole lot of money, because when you're in the capital bill, it's bonded money, and you really have to watch your P's and Q's so you don't have our rating, AAA rating, lowered by not having enough money in our account and not handling it correctly. Let's see. H3 was one of the first bills that we put out, and that's on racism. We are not supposed to be racist, but believe it or not, we are. As you can see on TV and all of these different things, we have a lot of problems with racism. We have, it's hard, I think, for such a white state to really understand the problems people of color or people of different ethnic backgrounds are having, trying to fit in and do their best, because sometimes it's an unequal education system for them. And that to me is wrong. So we passed that one very first. We had youth come, high school students come in and talk to us regarding vaping and Juuls, these electronic cigarettes. And they are dead against them. And they don't want any part of them. They'd like them to be totally illegal or priced so high that nobody could afford them, because the children are using it, and of course the companies are basing it towards the children. We have bubblegum flavor. We have every flavor in the book you can think of to entice. It was like the old Joe Camel ad. It was everything that the kids would want, and it was cool. It was really cool. And they weren't smoking, supposedly, tobacco. But there's more nicotine in the Juuls than there is in some of the other things that we've been smoking. Of course, we've spent millions to keep people from smoking, and we pass pot. So doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. So let's see what else I have. In corrections, today, and I'm here and they're there, today they are taking a committee, the Women's Caucus, which I'm part chair of, and they're going to see the women's facility in Chittenden, which is rather depressing, to say the least. I mean, I know you're in jail and you're not supposed to have the Hilton. However, this particular facility is one of the first, one of the oldest, one of the smallest, and it's just not enjoyable at all. I mean, there's nowhere they can have programming. They go back to, okay, they're going to knit. They're going to do some of these other things that are just woman kind of things, because they have no room to do anything else. So the Women's Caucus is going down. They're going to stop at the Lund facility first. They're going to see, that's like an outreach. When the women come out of corrections, a lot of times they will go to Lund and they'll get help, and they'll get maybe, hopefully, back on their feet. And from the Lund, they're going to the correction, and they've got a date to have a circle, a huge circle of not only legislators, but the inmates that want to participate. And they're going to finally ask them, what can we do to help you? I mean, I went to, well, all of us, I think, went to, except Mr. Rogers, which he couldn't attend. but we went to a huge meeting as far as education is concerned. And somebody sort of hollered at us, but whatever. This is a citizen legislature. And we serve and we do the best we can, and we are not politicians. Certainly can't compare us to Washington. We're not that smart, somehow. We've lost it, or we haven't been doing it long enough. One of the two. But we're just plodding right along. There are 1,500 bills that have been proposed to the Ledge Council, which it goes to Ledge Council, they write up the bill, they put it on paper in the legalese that they have to do, and then it's presented or at least handed out to the different committees. I think 1,500 is just a little over the top, considering we won't get to many of them. Let's see, the youth also spoke on marijuana. How's that? It says, do you really want a marijuana dispensary coming to your town? And then it told you all the reasons why you don't. And actually, they're saying that marijuana cartel activity increased dramatically in Colorado since they passed the marijuana. I'm sure I've left lots of things out. I have a list here of all kinds of bills that are coming up, but I'm not going to bore you with them. I mean, some of them are really off the wall. They should just stay on the wall and never come off. So, I mean, they're really dumb. But, in my opinion, I'm sure it's not in somebody else's, but it is in my opinion. They're now, after all our problems, they're actually trying to figure out if we can stop testing for our cars. No more the testing. And here we have this big to-do over the red lights, the check engine lights. Now somebody's come up with, well, let's get rid of it altogether. Well, when we were in Florida, my husband and I, we were in Florida, and they built beautiful inspection stations. And then they closed them. And they don't inspect any cars. So, like I said, politicians leave something to be desired to the rest of the people. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. And now I'd like to welcome freshman Representative Woodman Page. Representative Page serves as a member of the House Committee on Health Care. Mr. Page.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's hard to follow up after listening to Senator Stott and Representative Batchelor. You don't give me much. You don't leave much for me to discuss after your presentations, but I'll certainly do my best. Some of the things that have occurred in the House recently, as many of you are probably aware, are Act 46, school consolidation. I did sign up on those bills that came out trying to delay school consolidation. Unfortunately, we were not successful. Some of the schools were allowed to wait another year before they actually consolidated. So in that regard, that is successful for those schools that have more time to consolidate, and also more time for the judiciary to determine whether Act 46 is actually legal or not. Probably the most contentious bill that has occurred recently is the Act 57. It's related to the unrestricted abortion, and as you know, it passed basically by a 2-to-1 vote by the Democrats voting a majority for it, and the Republicans against that bill. We also have the taxing of vaping systems, electrical cigarettes. There was some concern about the Juul, whether that should be taxed or not because of the medical use for it. If you have cancer, you may use the Juul as as the device to use for your cancer treatment. So there were some legislators that thought that was unfair to tax the delivery device, but nevertheless, that was taxed something like 99%, not just the jewel, but also the vaping gun. We also recently voted for our new adjutant general, which is Colonel Knight, and we also voted for UVM trustees. There were 3 that were voted in to represent. As Mr. Davies mentioned, I am on the healthcare committee. It's not something that I had initially signed up for. I had some other interests, but in retrospect, I think all of us here probably know someone that is addicted to opioids or has had an overdose. Also, some of you may have known somebody that has committed suicide. You may also have a friend or family member that is that has had a mental health crisis. And all of us are not getting any younger, so we're all going to face elderly care in the future. So in many ways, these items that I just mentioned have affected me personally. And in retrospect, it's probably a good thing that I am in the healthcare committee, so maybe I can help work on some of these issues. I serve on the healthcare committee with Brian Smith. Right now in our committee, we have not gotten to our bills that have been assigned to our committee. It's mainly briefings on the healthcare situation in Vermont. We have had a number of healthcare advocates, people from the hospital associations, physicians, nurses, a local group called SASH, which I think works here in the Newport area, Northeast Human Services. All these groups have come and given us briefings. In many cases, in these briefings, they'll show maps where their services are offered, and you look at the map, and there's nothing in Orleans County or Essex County. And myself and Representative Smith will always stand up and say, what's going on in the Northeast Kingdom? Why aren't some of those services available for our people as well? And we've done it so many times now that we don't even have to ask the question because our committee colleagues are now asking those questions as well. We recently toured the Middlesex and the Berlin psychiatric hospitals. The Berlin facility was recently, it was created, I guess, after Irene struck Waterbury, and they had to find another facility. So they created the Middlesex facility. It's basically just 2 trailers that are attached, and it really needs to be replaced and have a more permanent facility. And hopefully that will be done soon. I know there's something like a 6-year timeline before that facility is created, but I think our committee will ask that that timeline be moved up substantially. There's a lot of problems with that facility because of the age, and it wasn't meant to be a permanent facility. Some other issues related to health care, as many of you know. We're living in a state that has less and less of a population compared to other states. And as a result, we have a difficulty in bringing in doctors and nurses and physicians that are experts in mental health care. I saw a statistic recently where a quarter of us support of all Americans will face some sort of mental health crisis in the future. And we currently don't have the manpower to deal with some of these issues. And hopefully those things will change in the future. I think that's it for now. I'll be open to questions after.
Thank you. That brings us to the point in the program where we're opening the floor to questions and comments from you, the citizens of Orleans County. And when you do come up, when you're called to come up, please stand somewhere near where I'm standing. Tell us who you are and where you're from. And if the question or comment is directed to less than the entirety of the delegation that is here today, please tell us to whom the question or comment is directed. And again, if you'll line up, the folks are already lining up. We hope we'll have time to reach all the questions. I do just remind everyone that we need to focus on issues facing the Vermont legislature, and would suggest that you keep your comments as brief as possible while still saying what you have to say. In other words, don't be like I am, because as an attorney, you use 10 words to say what should be able to be said in one. Okay, Chet Greenwood.
Good morning, Chet Greenwood from Derby. There's a bill that's going through the House now, H-107, it's paid family leave. And the benefits of paid, and I'm not getting paid family leave, but the benefits are up to 12 weeks of 100% of your pay. And it's pretty loose. It's going to be regulated by the Department of Labor. And the way some of the doctors in this area are overly compassionate, I think it's going to be fraud. It's going to be ripe for fraud, this bill. And it's going to be funded by the taxes, 0.93% payroll tax, half by the individual, so the employee pays into it, and half by the employer. So if you're making $500 a week, it's going to cost you about $2.30, and your employer is saying, doesn't sound bad. So if you got 20 employees, it could cost you about $3,000 a year. Again, it doesn't sound too bad. However, the Ethan Allen Institute, the think tank, did a study, and they estimate this is the people who wrote this bill underestimated the benefit by $100 million. So the way the bill is written, if it's short funds, the legislature could automatically raise that rate. So that 0.93% could easily double in a year's time or more. So, and that's, to counter that, the governor, with Governor Sununu of New Hampshire, come up with a joint plan, paid family leave, and I wish it would get some traction. That plan would cost a third of this one. It pays 65% of your pay, and it pays up to 6 weeks. Now, back on the other one, nobody needs 100% of their pay if they're home for 12 weeks. I mean, you don't have the same expenses if you stay home as if you're going to work every day. So I really think that 65% of your pay is sufficient. It's a starter, and it pays for 6 weeks, and it covers your most of it's designed for pregnancies, or a baby, or an adoption to stay home. So I just wish the governor's plan would get some traction. I haven't heard any of you talk about it. I don't think it's in any of your committees, but I'd like to know what you think about it. Thank you.
Senator Starr.
Chet, I haven't seen H-107, but I did sign on to a bill with Randy Brock and several other senators in the Senate that would support Governor Scott and Governor Sununu's plan, thinking that we could get started with that, and if it didn't work, well, fix it. But at least it would be a start in the right direction. and it would pay about as Chet said, about 65% of the salary that you were receiving. And so I signed on to that, and I think there's 6 or 8 of us in the Senate so far that have signed on to that and moving forward. But the House bill, it's hard telling whether we'll even get it in the Senate. Depends on, well, no, I bet that we will get it because they just ran stuff through on the House side, and a lot of times it's not very good work that they do on their bills. It's too one-sided as far as I'm concerned, and there's, the discussion goes on for hours, but it never amounts to anything, and so I don't know if we'll ever get that bill or not, but moving forward with the other.
Representative Batchelor.
I have to agree with the governor, and I think I do believe paid family leave can be very necessary. However, we don't need to go broke doing it. I think it's a really, really good idea, and I've already signed on to the governor's. And right now it's in general affairs, general housing, and military affairs. So where it goes from there, I'm not sure, but we've not seen it, and nothing has really been done with it. Thank you.
Representative Page.
As some of you may know, last year this was a proposal that Governor Scott turned down. He vetoed it. And then this year he came up with his plan with a joint partnership with New Hampshire and Governor Sununu. It will be offered to, I think, state employees, and I believe it's a free offering to state employees, which I would have liked to have seen the state employees maybe pay a little bit more for this, since they're not paying anything. But that said, I think it is a good program. I think it's something that is needed.
Good morning, I'm Ann Chiarello, and I live in Newport. And once a year, I pretty much come to you and say something about this. The federal government has just passed, and the president signed a bill called First Steps to get non-violent offenders out of the federal prisons. They're there for too long. It takes a lot of money to keep them there, and I think that's a wise move. And I would suggest again, as I have for a couple of years now, that our prisoners, especially the non-violent offenders, need to get out of the prison system as fast as possible. And instead of spending more money building prisons, a state like Texas, who's gone for a plan like this, has closed some of its prisons. Instead of having more prison guards, you can have more social workers who could get prisoners out into the community and back into productive lives, working again. And it would cost a lot less than, as I hear some of you talking about, oh, we'll have to build another prison probably. So I would suggest that that's something that you should be seriously looking at. And then when you think of who makes up that population, poor people, and it is true that minorities also make up that population. And then if we look, and we have a model for it in Newport about what happens when you're rich. Because if you steal if you steal $500,000 from an investor under the EB-5 program, and you buy a Trump Tower, a condominium, And when people begin to think it's all looking a little suspicious, 3 and 4 years later, you're still walking around on the street. You still own a bunch of condominiums, and nobody's put you in jail. So you know that rich people don't get punished the way poor people do. So please seriously think, instead of putting more poor people in jail, get them out, find other programs for people, keep them productive on the street. Thank you.
Senator Starr.
Yeah, to answer the question on nonviolent prisoners, we're at our lowest rate of prisoners right now that we've been in years, and most nonviolent prisoners are already out of jail. The jail we have here in Newport are for people under 25 years old. They're the young prisoners. And when I spoke about the new jail, a lot of these young 18-year-olds and younger are in the Woodside facility because of mental health problems. And that's why we're thinking that place, rather than dumping money in to try to maintain it and keep it up, would be better if it was in a better location and was more modern. It's an old building. It was built in, I think, in 45 or 48, something like that. But our nonviolent prisoners are pretty much out of jail at the present time here in Vermont.
Representative Batchelor.
I don't know, I can't seem to get out of jail, which is wonderful. I really enjoyed working for corrections. I think the major problem, if you talk about Woodside, when we visited Woodside, it was a very, very old, sort of dungy, but they tried to improve it, facility. It was closed because they have to lock the doors at night. So Medicaid, who was paying the largest percentage, they said if you lock it, then these kids are in prison. But there are children there, and I call them children, that need some mental health. They need to be helped. And we don't have mental health. We don't have the number of clinicians to help the people that we have. And as far as I have been trying so hard to bring the prisoners that are out of state home. But there again, we have no place where they can go, like an in-between area. And everybody says, I don't want prisoners, convicts, whatever they are called now, in my backyard. And it's very, very difficult. But I agree that if you learn more if you go to prison from people you should not be learning from. They are so ingenious. And I won't even go there, but they really are so ingenious. And I know the one here in Newport, they have this new mental assisted treatment, the MAT. And I spoke with the superintendent. Everybody in the prison signed up for it. Everybody, all of them. And it was only supposed to be the people who had the need, who's in there because of drug rehab or the lack of. And but everybody signed up, and now we're having more problems with I don't know, passing buprenorphine strips and pills. So we haven't solved any problem. But bringing the people home is absolutely the right thing to do. We just have to figure out where we're going to put them. I originally thought that Windsor facility would not be a bad place for them, but that's not what anybody else thought. So, I mean, there's a few of us. But Windsor prison sits on 900 acres. And whether the women should go there, it would be certainly bigger and nicer. They could have gardens. They could do all kinds of things. Or they're going to sell the facility. facility itself, but it's closed and it's tightened up, so thank you.
Representative Page.
The only thing I can say about nonviolent offenders is Governor Scott and his team is aware of it and is trying to keep nonviolent offenders out of jails. The issue about Windsor, I did hear a rumor that they're looking to either lease the property or sell it to somebody, yes, to a marijuana farm. So I guess stay tuned to that.
Next.
Good morning. I'm Tom Stelter. I'm from Irisburg. I am working alongside a group called DUMP, and we're looking for alternative solutions for the statewide landfill. And I'm specifically here today to ask the legislators that are present and in our Northeast Kingdom delegation, and you as citizens, to support an effort that we're making. We would like an air quality and health monitoring study to be created in the Northeast Kingdom. We have proposed this study to Julie Moore, the head of the agency of
Natural resources.
Thank you, Natural Resources. I'm sorry, I'm new at this and nervous. And basically what it is we want to set a number of air monitoring stations in the near boundary of the landfill. We call that the odor zone. We have residents and roads that are mapped out that have regular and constant odor problems. We want to verify those because when you go to hearings and when you talk to Casella, it's sort of like, are these people bullshitting us about odors or what? They're not. We also...
Excuse me, Tom. We need to focus on issues that are facing the Vermont legislature. That doesn't include regulatory permit issues that are going on.
We'd like the legislators to support that proposal and perhaps sponsor a bill.
Senator Stark.
I think anything like what Tom proposed is probably a good idea. I think maybe we want to do some preliminary looking at it to see what it would cost if we could get Casella to fund these air quality studies. I know at certain times during the year you get odors here in Newport from the landfill, I think the most important thing that we could do is convince ANR to find a central location for a waste system rather than at one end of the state or the other end of the state. It should be somewhere in the middle. That would cut down on truck traffic. Route 14 is completely, almost impassable because of the truck traffic coming up through there. Route 58 from Irisburg to Lowell, the trucks get stuck in the hill. It's not a very good place to have a dump on one end of the state or the other, and I think this monitoring would work to make sure that our air is safe and clean. And I noticed in your proposal you had monitors near the schools and where our children spend a lot of their time, which could make sense to do that. But I think if we're going to do that, Casella should pay a the bill for that monitoring and not the tax.
Bob, I'd just like to say, they collect
Again,
$3 million.
again, one opportunity is on. Representative Batchel. So I take it, Senator Starr, that means you're going to be introducing that bill.
Not necessarily, but
Thank you. I appreciate it, Bob. That's a good job.
but certainly talking with Julie Moore it'll open that dialogue up.
I don't like where the dump is located any more than anybody else does. Living in Derby Line, we don't have the problems as far as the odors are concerned, but I cannot believe that they are not horrible when the wind is blowing in the right direction. It's like living downwind from the cow manure. So, only I think it might be worse. I'm not sure. I agree we need to do something. I'm not sure what we can do. I do know, I have my youngest son who's a Class A operator of a wastewater management plant in Florida that says that wastewater management plants cannot take care, they're not built or designed to take care of the sludge or leachate. So I don't know why they're even putting it through there. Doesn't make a whole bunch of sense other than maybe to placate the rest of us. Yep, or money. And Casella's got lots of money, but now we have to figure out how we can get them to open their wallets and actually do something for the citizens that are living around where they are located. And we definitely need more than one dump in the whole state.
And it sounds like Representative Batchelor is going to sponsor the bill in the House.
Right.
Representative Page.
The only bill that I'm aware of that has a connection to our landfill is one that Representative Markoff put forward and that I co-sponsored. It was a study to determine other options related to our landfill. That said, trying to find another location for our landfill in Vermont, I'm sorry to tell you, it's not going to happen. It's too costly, and I just don't think there's so many groups out there that don't want to have a landfill in their backyard, and I don't want it in mine either, but it's here, and we have to accept it, and we have to make it as safe as possible. There is some discussions about having Casella either build some sort of treatment facility up at the waste plant there, or have it added on to our septic systems here that will take out PFOAs and PFOSs. So that's all I have for that.
We have 5 more minutes for the question or comment and the response.
Okay, so I basically am just commenting on several pieces of legislation. I'm Michelle Tarrant. I'm a resident of Derby. I'm also the executive director of Northeast Kingdom Learning Services, which serves the Tri-County region. So there are a couple bills. One is H-194. H-194 is a bill that proposes to expand the population served by the Child Care Financial Assistance Program, enhance subsidy size, increase the rate upon which reimbursements to early learning professionals are based. It also proposes to implement a student loan repayment program for early learning professionals and expand an existing scholarship to individuals seeking a degree in early childhood education or early childhood special education. The bill establishes a refundable tax credit for early learning professionals and for employers investing in childcare. It also establishes the Early Care and Learning Fund, an act relating to establishing incentives for early learning professionals and improving access to childcare. This bill addresses 3 areas. It addresses the area for improving the study rates, so for increased access to childcare, increased access for and supports for the providers of childcare, and supports for employers who employ the parents of the children that are being served by the professionals. It's three legs at once, and all three legs have to be lifted up simultaneously. This type of legislation is getting it right. It's also having to understand that this is a down payment on our future. Investing in a bill like this really is something that is going to, we're going to reap benefits of this down the road. Improved childcare, improved access to childcare, improved affordability, benefits all. It benefits the employers. When employers can count on staff coming to work because they're not having to worry about or address childcare issues, they're more productive. If employees are more productive, the company can feel more confident in taking risks and expanding and enlarging their product or their product line. So I highly suggest that you look into this bill, support it in whatever way you can. And one thing that's also I want to mention is that this bill has in it around student loan repayment and student loan opportunities. If there's other legislation that's happening that is addressing those areas, I think legislators need to be talking because those kind of things should be aligned. If the state is going to do one thing around student loan repayment or for employers in one sector, it should be something that can be across the board. So then you don't have, the disparity of what sector, receives benefits. So I think having legislators align those types of things, if this is stuff we're going to start seeing, is really good. The other one is...
I'm sorry. Oh. 2 minutes left for the response to the legislature.
I don't want their response. I just
well,
want
we need it. That's the purpose. Senator Sapp. Thank you. Thanks for
as I stated earlier when I was speaking, over in the Senate, we haven't got H-194 yet. They're probably still working on that in the House. But it sounds like it's a pretty big step forward and a good step forward to help our young people. But we did add $800,000 in for the child care providers, and we also put $1.4 million in the one-time grants to providers that will help bring their pay level up a little bit because it hasn't been raised in years. But an overall bill, hopefully the House will work on that, and probably is either in human services or education.
Okay, Senator Starr, we can allow 30 seconds for the other legislators. Representative Batchelor.
In my less than 30 seconds, I do believe that we finally got it last Friday, and it's sticking right there on the wall as of right now. We will do our best to look at it and do some research and have some testimony on it, and we will continue to do what we can do.
And Representative Page.
I'm not familiar with H-194, but I'll look into it. I do believe also the governor has come out in support of child care, but I don't know what those details are, and certainly I am for child care.
Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of this morning's legislative breakfast. I'd like to thank Senator Starr, Representative Batchelor and Page, Paul Bissell Financial Strategies, the East Side Restaurant, and the members of the media. Our next breakfast will be held here on March 18th, at which breakfast our guests are scheduled to be Senator John Rogers and Representatives Sam Young and Mark Higler. Thank you all for attending.